If you've never been to prison, chances are you have some misconceptions about what it's like. You have some misconceptions about the people in there. And the training really just brought home what it takes in terms of sensitivity to be able to work in a prison environment, in terms of being sensitive to the political, well, I won't say political, but you know, maybe you could call it prison politics, in terms of being able to see the layers of trauma that express themselves through people, and being able to see how yoga can address that, and specifically how to teach calming classes, because my background as a yoga teacher and as a yogi really was more focused on power yoga. And so, you know, the therapeutic aspects of it were not covered as in depth when I was training. And so I feel like this training really helped to sensitize me to what it is going on there, and yoga techniques that'll help people to calm down and manage emotions while they're dealing with intense situations.
I heard about the work that James was doing, and it was an exciting thing for me because I didn't know that other people were doing what I was doing a little bit of experimentation with. And I went into San Quentin with James and saw what he was doing with the people that he was working with, and it inspired me to take the training and to start co-teaching with James in San Quentin, and it's been an amazing experience.
When I first started teaching at San Quentin, I hadn't done the training with James. It wasn't until about a few months later, into I think 6 months after I'd been teaching, and I was just using the knowledge that I had from teacher trainings that are standard 200-hour teacher trainings, but I didn't really make the connections with how to facilitate the inmates, the prisoners at San Quentin, until I did the Prison Yoga Project teacher training, and that's where I learned how to cater the teaching in a trauma-sensitive environment.
At the time I learned about the Prison Yoga Project, I was volunteering for a different program inside San Quentin. And one evening, one of my students was talking about a yoga class he had taken earlier that day. And at first I thought perhaps I heard him wrong. And so I probed a little further about this yoga class inside, and he told me about PYP and about this infamous yoga man that walks around these yoga mats around San Quentin. And I had two reactions. The first was, yoga inside prison? Like, how does that work? And it was quickly followed by this like piquing interest of course, yoga in prison. Like, I want to know how it works. And I want to know this person and understand more about the program. So I reached out and did the training.
I had known James by his reputation and who he was, so we started talking about what he does inside San Quentin and his trainings. And the first conversations were, you know, what do you think about coming into the prison and checking it out? And I said, it's not really my community. I don't know how I can relate to prisoners, and I don't think I have anything to offer them. So James told me that he actually had a veterans group inside the prison, and that if I wanted to come in and check it out, it would be a great opportunity. So I did. I jumped at it. I filled out the paperwork to get okayed to come into the prison, and I started coming in and watching James teach and becoming, you know, bonding with the prisoners and learning how James teaches and works with them, and then later took his training. My attitude changed huge. So I not only bond with and appreciate the veteran prisoners, but every prisoner I've met. I've got the opportunity to teach a couple other classes, and they're people. They're just people. They went through a dark part of their lives where they screwed up, and they wound up in prison, but they're the same type of people you'll meet at the Starbucks, the Walmart, and the pizza joint.
When I learned about the Prison Yoga Project, I was really inspired by James's approach, the longevity of the program, the positive impact it's been having, and so I definitely wanted to get connected and get involved. And so it's been a really great opportunity for me to gain exposure as well as to really learn about the transformative nature of this work.
Just seeing the way that people carry themselves and hold everything that they have to hold with grace based on the yoga is something that's been very powerful. And also just seeing the humanity. you know, because a lot of people, you know, like I said, a lot of people have notions about what prison is like, what people in prison are like. And truth be told, they have back pain just like everybody else. They have sciatica. They have the same kind of health issues as everybody else. And, you know, they also deal with hierarchy just like the rest of us in the prison outside. And so it's really just humbled me to see the way that they can hold what it is that they hold and the way that they're able to just bring integrity to the practice. Not just the yoga, not just the physical asanas, but also, you know, the practice of moving beyond persona, being able to practice a generous spirit and things like that. And I see that in them, and that inspires me as a person and as a teacher to really bring something that they can use.
The work that James does with the Prison Yoga Project is long-term, and so James has been working with many of them the same inmates over the course of years. And it was incredibly inspiring for me to be able to see the change and the transformation that had happened with these inmates over time, and working with the same teacher and practicing yoga and meditation. And for me, I hadn't ever seen anything like that, even on the outside at a yoga studio with anyone practicing with the same teacher weekly over time. And to see the impact of it was really inspiring, and I just decided I have to get involved. I have to know more about this. I'd love to practice and teach with James and to really help the work move forward in the world.
You have to be very patient for what they go through on a weekly basis. So I see them every once a week. So what they go through in a week is a lot more than we can even imagine. There's a lot of things that happen. So learning to develop that deep kind of patience, deeper compassion, has really been sort of the driving force for me when I do the prison yoga, you know, every week.
I have a whole different approach to working with students, whether they're inside or in my public classes here in the city, around what it means to find happiness, peace, contentment with self, and that yoga doesn't need to look a certain way. It doesn't require a studio, a luxury retreat, time away from life, but that we can find peace and freedom just within ourselves, regardless of the setting or the parameters in which we exist. And that's something that I knew theoretically before Prison Yoga Project, but hadn't directly experienced with students and the practice itself.
The biggest thing that I've been able to take out and bring into my public classes is compassion. Sometimes I come from a power yoga background, and there's always pushing your students into inspiration, and it's something that not all students respond to. And I've learned in the prison not to do that, and they find their path through yoga, through a more gentle practice and more meditation. And so I've brought that into my power yoga classes and gotten away from a lot of the heavy pushing into inspiration and moving into poses that maybe a student's not completely comfortable with.
I think every time that I go into San Quentin and I go behind the gates and go through security and interact with the guards, it's a very different environment. And so first and foremost, I think it makes me much more empathetic to the situation that we have across this country in terms of the mass incarceration of so many people. And then to have the interaction with the students, and again, many of these practitioners have been practicing with James for many years, you can see the effects. And so it makes me that much more motivated to continue to do this work. When I leave, I feel energized, I feel inspired. Just by their sincerity, their authenticity, when they practice, there's just a real sense that they're very serious about their practice, and so I can appreciate that, and I feel that I'm appreciated just by presence being there.
This work has deeply impacted my life, and for some reason, I think even since I was a child, I always wanted to work in prisons for some reason. I didn't know why. And part of me doesn't know why I want to do it. I just love doing it. And part of it is a personal reason. It's just so fulfilling to be there and to share the work, to share yoga. with people who wouldn't otherwise be able to access it. And so that's really fulfilling. But what feels the most fulfilling is the relationships that are built, and that it happens over time, and that you can see that I'm getting as much benefit as any of the people in the class are getting.
One of my goals as a yoga teacher is to reach out to my own community. And one thing I've noticed in yoga studios is that that's not where my community is. And unfortunately, prison is where a lot of my community is. And so it's actually something that gives me a good feeling to be able to go in and teach my brothers, and also teach other people, you know, the Latin brothers, the API brothers, and the white brothers.
I think James has talked about this a lot, that it requires a sixth sense, an ability to be trusting and open to what's going to happen, but not completely disarmed, and really understanding the environment in which you're walking into. And I think there is a tendency for sometimes in yoga for us to let all barriers down and just to really want to arrive for our students. And there's a practice there of setting boundaries and really just offering the practice and letting that do the work, and stepping back as, you know, an individual, as a woman, and as a caretaker, or any of those other things that may come up.
Some of the changes that I've seen are actually every day. They come in different people than they leave, even from a class. Usually the room's filled with energy, a little agitation, and they leave floating. So just from day to day, I see a change, and then getting to meet and really learning about who these prisoners are and the changes they've made in their lives, and how they've shifted. And it's a personality shift with them, not going to triggers that trigger them into violence. You can really see it after spending some time with them, and it's really rewarding. It's a great thing to see.
They really come for the physical experience. They want to stretch. It's typical things that you see in the yoga studios. They just want the physical part, but then they say, I kind of see a shift happening mentally. The conversations in my mind, they're not so demonic anymore. They're not oppressive anymore. I'm able to relate or talk to my own conversations, creating a meta consciousness. So they see that develop, and they apply it to whatever spirituality they may have. They're able to complement the yoga to that.
We found that it's a really good synthesis of yoga and meditation to bring to this work, because there's a strong need there when you're in prison, you're incarcerated, and your survival instincts are up, and your nervous system is working on a survival level. So what we do through yoga is we just begin to allow and give space for the inmates to drop in a little bit more into their own presence and into their own idea of, okay, I'm safe, at least if it's just for this 30 minutes or an hour and a half. I'm in my body, I'm okay to be here. And that over time accumulates, and people report they're sleeping better and they feel better generally. So it's been neat.